This is the story of a California couple that scammed people for COVID relief, spent millions, and left a goodbye note to their 3 kids. But did they get away with it? Stay tuned. The California couple have already been sentenced to prison for illegally obtaining more than $20 million in COVID-19 relief funds. 37-year-old Marietta Terabelian received a 6-year sentence for conspiracy, bank fraud, and money laundering, according to the Department of Justice. Her husband, 43-year-old Richard Ayvazyan, was sentenced to 7 years behind bars for conspiracy, bank fraud, and money laundering. But the couple turned out to make things much harder on authorities than they originally thought. More on that later. In June 2021, the couple and 2 relatives were found guilty of submitting fraudulent loan applications in order to obtain more than $18 million in Paycheck protection and economic injury disaster loan program funds, which they then used to live a lavish lifestyle, including buying luxury homes in California. One of them was a $3.25 million hillside house in Tarzana, a Mediterranean-style villa with panoramic views. They also bought mansions in Glendale and Palm Desert, as well as luxury goods like gold coins, diamonds, jewelry, imported furnishings, designer handbags, clothing, a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and watches, including a $35,000 Rolex Ayvazyan bought while on holiday in Turks and Caicos Islands. Before they were thrown behind bars, the couple escaped. The 2 cut their tracking bracelets off and went on the run from authorities and were sentenced in absentia, which means they weren't present at the hearing, obviously. The family fraud ring created sham businesses to get many of the loans, attaching fake payroll and forged tax returns to the applications. To open bank accounts for the businesses, they used the names of people whose identities were stolen. The group submitted 151 fraudulent loan applications that were supposed to prevent small businesses from collapsing during the initial lockdowns of COVID-19. When federal agents in combat gear raided the 2.6-acre estate in November 2020, Terabelian, who was out on bail, dashed out the back door and hurled a grocery bag into the bushes. Agents fetched the bag and emptied it. Stacks of cash tumbled onto the lawn, about $450,000. As a result of the couple's escape from supervision, prosecutors requested enhanced sentencing. Ayvazyan victimized elderly persons, including those with disabilities, deceased persons, and foreign exchange students who only spent a few months in the United States years ago and now live thousands of miles away in a foreign country. In addition to wire fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering conspiracy, the defendants were also found guilty of conspiracy to commit both types of fraud. The defendants also submitted false documents to lenders and the Small Business Administration, including fake identity documents, tax documents, and payroll records. Ayvazyan was also convicted of aggravated identity theft. In addition to bank accounts, jewelry, watches, gold coins, and 3 homes, the defendants were also ordered to forfeit $450,000 in cash, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. During the sentencing, U.S. District Judge Stephen V. Wilson said he could not recall a fraud case conducted in such a callous, intentional way without any regard for the law. Judge Wilson described Ayvazyan as an endemic, cold-hearted fraudster with no regard for the law and someone who views fraud as an achievement. In the end, they were all convicted on June 25th of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and wire fraud, 11 counts of wire fraud, 8 counts of bank fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. Text messages really did them in, and they show the family discussing how to create phony payroll reports and invent employer identification numbers that would look legitimate to the government loan monitors. As mentioned before, while on bail, the couple escaped. Federal officials said they cut off their tracking bracelets on August 29, 2021, and went on the run. When the couple fled their California home, abandoning their 3 teenage children, they left a typewritten note for the kids, ages 13, 15, and 16. The note said, "We will be together again one day. This is not a goodbye, but a brief break from each other." A reward of up to $20,000 was immediately offered by the FBI for any information leading to the arrest of the couple. But perhaps there's more to the story. Well, that's what Ashwin J. Ram, the attorney of the couple, claimed. Ram tried to convince the judge that the couple was actually kidnapped. They may have been abducted by other co-conspirators. Since Ayvazyan has been accused of conspiring with dozens of people, but only a few have been charged, perhaps someone out there wanted to silence him if he was actually the ringleader. Apparently, the couple's farewell note also referenced threats they were facing, something about leaving to avoid the danger being posed to the family. The lawyer urged the government to investigate. According to Terabelian's attorney, Ryan Fraser, she is a loving mother and devoted wife who has tirelessly supported not only her children, but also her parents, mother-in-law, and sister. With $20 million in stolen money, I sure hope so. With the couple on the run, or kidnapped, the couple's 3 children were being raised by their grandmothers and a court-appointed guardian. But then their caregivers applied for emergency passports for them to travel to Armenia, where they have relatives. Apparently, they wanted to send their kids to Armenia to avoid the media circus surrounding their parents' sentencing, but their passports weren't approved. It just seemed too fishy, to say the least. Finally, the lawyers tried to have the hearing delayed until the couple resurfaced. Well, now they have resurfaced all right. Nicole Oxman, a spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Justice, said that federal authorities are seeking the extradition of Richard and Marietta and his sister-in-law Tamara Dadyan. Tamara, the wife of Ayvazyan's brother, disappeared January 28th after U.S. Magistrate Stephen Wilson gave her 30 days to surrender over the objections of federal prosecutors. She has now been sentenced to 10 years and 10 months in prison. Dadyan pleaded guilty to aggravated identity theft, conspiracy to commit bank and wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Her husband and his brother were named as co-conspirators. The sentence for Artur, her husband, was 5 years in prison. Sadly, this couple wasn't the only ones to cash in on the looting of the COVID relief plan known as PPP. Fraudsters came out in droves during the pandemic. Investigators believe that many of those who took part in what prosecutors call the largest fraud in U.S. history stole hundreds of billions of dollars from taxpayers. This money was supposed to go to people affected by the coronavirus pandemic, but people couldn't resist purchasing luxury automobiles and mansions, private jet flights, and swanky vacations with the stolen money. Experts say that fraudsters were involved in theft as much as $80 billion, or about 10% of the $800 billion given out in COVID relief, known as the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP. In addition, some $90 billion to $400 billion is believed to have been stolen from the $900 billion COVID unemployment relief program, at least half of which was taken by international fraudsters. Another $80 billion could also have been stolen from separate COVID disaster relief programs. Depending on the program, the criminal methodology varied. In this epic swindle of COVID unemployment relief, individual criminals and organized crime groups mostly used stolen identities to claim unemployment benefits from state workforce agencies distributing federal funds. Each identity was worth up to $30,000. Although COVID relief fraud has been known for some time, its huge scope and disturbing implications have only recently become evident. They bought Lamborghinis, Bentleys, Teslas, and of course, Ferraris. Florida rapper Diamond Baby Blue Smith has been sentenced to over a year after being arrested in a COVID-19 loan scheme and buying a brand new Ferrari. The 37-year-old Pretty Ricky member will serve 20 months in prison after pleading guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud on August 4th. He was arrested in October 2020 for submitting fraudulent loan applications to receive Paycheck Protection Program funds. The COVID relief program provided $24 million to Baby Blue through a scam. Blue received a loan of $426,717 for ThrowbackJersey.com LLC and just over $708,000 for Blue Star Records LLC. It was later discovered that he falsified documents and used the money to buy luxury items, including this Ferrari at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. Authorities seized the car when the rapper was arrested. In addition to prison time, he must also pay over $1.1 million in restitution and another $1.1 million in forfeiture. Moving on to another fraudster now, Prosecutors said 38-year-old MUSTAFA QADIRI of Irvine, California, used money from the Paycheck protection program to buy 3 cars that cost 6 figures apiece, including this 2011 Ferrari 458 Italia. The Southern California man was charged after obtaining $5 million in federal loans for fake businesses and then spent the money on lavish vacations, this Ferrari, a Bentley, and a Lamborghini, along with an extra $2 million in his bank accounts. The total fraud in all COVID relief funds amounts to a mind-boggling sum of taxpayer money that rivals the $579 billion in federal funds that President Joe Biden included in his massive 10-year infrastructure plan. Nothing like this has ever happened before, said Matthew Schneider, a former U.S. attorney from Michigan. This is the biggest fraud in generations. Most of the losses are unrecoverable, but federal officials say $600 billion is still destined for the drain. Moving on to Dinesh Shah. In connection with his fraudulent scheme to obtain approximately $24.8 million in forgivable Paycheck Protection Program loans, this Texas man was sentenced to more than 11 years in prison for wire fraud and money laundering offenses. The 55-year-old Dinesh Shah of Koppal pleaded guilty to the charges on March 24, 2021. Shah submitted 15 fraudulent applications filed under the names of various alleged businesses he owned or controlled, when in fact no businesses had employees or paid wages consistent with the amount claimed in the PPP applications. Shah asserted that they had numerous employees and hundreds of thousands of dollars in payroll expenses, but they didn't. With the $17 million he received in PPP loan funds based on false statements and fabricated documents, he diverted the money to his own benefit, purchasing multiple homes in Texas, paying off the loans on other homes in California, and buying a fleet of luxury cars, including this Bentley convertible, a Corvette Stingray, and a Porsche Macan. Additionally, Shah sent millions of dollars in PPP proceeds through international money transfers. In the end, in part of his guilty plea, Shah agreed to forfeit 8 homes, 6 luxury vehicles, and more than $9 million in these fraudulent proceeds. Shah was also ordered to pay that $17 million back in restitution in addition to his prison sentence. Even pro athletes got in on the COVID relief fraud. Ex-NFL player KENBRELL Thompkins made over $1.4 million over his career, but I guess that wasn't enough. Now the former Jets receiver is embroiled in a fraud scandal. Records obtained by the Associated Press show that Thomas pled guilty to unauthorized access device fraud and aggravated identity fraud for using stolen Florida IDs to apply for COVID-19 unemployment benefits from California. Consequently, the state allegedly sent $300,000 in debit cards to South Florida addresses he set up. Thompson then withdrew about $230,000 from ATMs in Miami-Dade County, according to prosecutors. Thompson now faces up to 12 years in prison. During the pandemic, some scammers got really creative. A scammer posed as Fast and Furious actor Vin Diesel and stole COVID relief funds deposited into a Massachusetts woman's bank account. The government is seeking to seize a Bank of America check worth over $16,000 in a federal case. Basically what happened was a woman and her daughter went to a Barnstable police department to report a scam on July 12th. Her mother explained that her daughter is mentally disabled and discovered that the PPP loan funds had been deposited into her Bank of America account. However, the daughter never applied for the loan. A check for more than $16,000 was written. The mother and daughter brought the check to the police station and handed it over to investigators. The daughter told investigators she thought she was communicating with a person she met online whom she believed was actor Vin Diesel. The scammer and the woman communicated via Google Hangouts and email. The scammer eventually demanded that the woman provide her banking information and a picture of her driver's license. She thought she was helping a charity run by the famous actor. She then noticed nearly $17,000 had appeared in her bank account. The woman told her mother that the deposit was strange and that she had never applied for a PPP loan. She also received a voicemail from a person posing as a manager asking for money. Investigators were allowed to review the online communications between the woman and the scammer and concluded she was conned during what is known as a romance scam. The government now wants a judge to allow it to take back the money. The culprit is still unknown, but better be driving fast and furious out of town because the feds are coming for him. A Polk County couple is accused of fraudulently collecting $5.8 million in COVID-19 relief money and using it to buy luxury cars, Louis Vuitton merchandise, and more, then flaunting it on Facebook. Julio Lugo and Rosenide Vanette, both of Davenport, have been charged with conspiracy and making false statements to a financial institution. Lugo has been charged with an illegal monetary transaction involving the illegal usage of coronavirus relief funds to pay off a note on a luxury car he purchased during the conspiracy. Vanette faces up to 35 years in prison if convicted. Lugo faces up to 45 years. Lugo and Vanette conspired to defraud the Small Business Administration of millions of dollars in coronavirus relief funds beginning in March 2020. Lugo and Vanette used their home IP address to submit at least 70 false and fraudulent loan applications for funds from the Paycheck Protection Program and Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. More than $5.8 million was requested in fraudulent loan applications, including shell companies set up by Lugo and Vanette. The conspirators also obtained coronavirus relief funds for a defunct tax preparation firm Lugo had previously used to commit a tax fraud in 2015. Following the emergency loans, the conspirators misused PPP and EIDL funds for paying off luxury vehicles and spending more than $62,000 at casinos, among other things. The conspirators also withdrew at least $320,000 in cash. They're now behind bars. Lastly, for this former Olympic speed skater, the ice is getting thin. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Utah, 41-year-old Allison Mary BAVER, who competed with the U.S. women's 3,000-meter relay team at the 2010 Vancouver Games, was arrested on money laundering charges and 8 counts of making false statements to a bank after allegedly defrauding an estimated $10 million of COVID relief funds. In April 2020, Allison BAVER Entertainment, a production company she founded after retiring from ice skating, applied for 8 Paycheck Protection Program loans. In court documents, Baker is accused of lying to the government about her monthly payroll being $4.7 million, when in reality, she had no payroll at all. In addition, she claimed to have employed between 100 and 430 people, which the feds alleged to be false. Additionally, she transferred $150,000 to another production company behind the Ted Bundy film No Man of God, which she appeared in. BAVER is being asked to forfeit about $9.7 million of her funds by prosecutors. In the end, she could serve 40 years in prison if convicted on all accounts. The U.S. Secret Service announced that at least $100 billion has been stolen from COVID-19 relief programs set up to help people. But crime doesn't pay. Over 900 criminal investigations have been opened into pandemic fraud, with cases in every state, and hundreds of people have been arrested with more to come.